expert, though, Ryan Scaggs. What's up, Scaggs?
Not much, just still drying out from Friday night. So
Yes, Ryan and I were on the call for our first North Idaho game night of the season in football. We were down in Worley on Friday night for a fun 8-man game between Coeur Christ Academy, making history there, their first game in school history in football, and then also Lakeside. And Lakeside ended up getting the win by a couple of touchdowns. We'll talk about that game more later on in the show. But to summarize, and everybody felt it in North Idaho Friday night. Doesn't matter if you were in District 1, if you were down in Lewiston, District 2, we got dumped on, Ryan. A lot of rain up here.
Yeah, and if you don't like the weather, as the saying goes in North Idaho, wait 10 minutes, because I think we pretty much experienced it all. We had that crazy wind and rain, and then it cleared up for like a matter of like 5 minutes with some sun. And I'm like, oh, it's breaking up. And then round 2, and then it like wind calmed down, then came back, and then round 3. So yeah, it was a long night. I mean, as far as weather-wise, I think it made it feel a lot longer than it was, but it was a great game. All things in retrospect, it was cold for August. It was crazy.
Ryan brought a pop-up canopy, which was clutch. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do the game because there's no press box at the Coeur Center there in Worley. You're just out there in the elements, which is fine. But at certain points, that wind would kick up, and you're in the back of at the very back of it with your both arms extended, like holding to both sides. I'm running the camera with one hand and grabbing on with the other to make sure it doesn't go flying away. It was something to see.
We just got to make do here at IdahoSports.com. We managed. I thought it was a good broadcast, but yeah, that never a dull moment broadcasting sports here in North Idaho. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, to me, the only thing worse than broadcasting in the elements is running. So let's start there with cross country.
Running, period. Running's just worse than anything. Yeah.
Yes. There are a lot of great, talented runners in North Idaho. I am not one of them. That is for sure. We had our first cross country competition of the season, Ryan. Post Falls hosted the Post Falls River Run at the Kiwanis Park down there in Post Falls. Logan Anderson is your individual winner on the boys' side from Lake City. On the girls' side, it was one of Post Falls' own, Kaylin Misner. And then in terms of the team race, there weren't any scores kept, but Lake City performed very well. Post Falls performed well. Logos came over and competed like they always do in cross country as well. So it was nice to get the season started, and it was really nice weather for a run.
Yeah, and I think it was an opportunity just for the athletes just get out on the course and put, quote unquote boots to the ground. Like it's a nice opportunity there. I know there's a number of big events coming up. Usually Lewiston hosts a big meet down at Hell's Gate State Park in Lewiston. There's always one up at Farragut. That's a pretty good meet as well. And a lot of these teams are traveling this year too. If you look at their schedules, I mean, there's going to be a lot of miles put in by a lot of these programs going to huge regional meets. So it's just an opportunity to get out on the course and kind of get some times under their belt to see how they're doing. And it was, obviously we've had great weather with the exception of Friday. Weather's been pretty solid here in the Northwest.
Now, one thing they do a little differently here at the River Run that you don't see at other traditional meets, there's no team scores kept, but then instead of having a varsity and a JV division, they divide it up by class. So on the girls' side, you had a junior, senior division, and you had a freshman, sophomore division. So Kaylin Misner from Post Falls won the junior, senior. Violet Hernandez from Lake City took the freshman, sophomore heat. And then for the boys, there was enough boys that they split it up into 4. There were seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen. Logan Anderson from Lake City won the senior race. He had the best time. The second best time came from Paul Kent from Sandpoint. He won the junior heat. Sam Reed from Lake City won the sophomore heat. And then Kai Budenseek from Sandpoint won the freshman heat. So Sandpoint and Lake City split the heats on the boys' side. So that was fun to see there as well.
Yeah.
It's a different way to do it. I like it. A little early season.
I mean, yeah, it's a chance to just see how you compare against your own class, but you get a chance, that we're going to see them run against each other, and regardless with the open classes just going boys and girls split. So we'll get plenty of that this year. So it's kind of a nice opportunity just to see how you compare to your peers.
For sure. Well, while some run, others fly, and the Coeur d'Alene Vikings volleyball team was flying high, literally and figuratively, after competing at the Kuna Classic on the opening weekend of competition. The Coeur d'Alene Press detailed their journey exceptionally well throughout the weekend. I'll tell you, Ryan, as somebody who's trying to track down volleyball results from, there was a couple of really big season opening tournaments around the state this weekend. Very appreciative that the Coeur d'Alene Press and the Coeur d'Alene High volleyball team calls in and reports those scores, because it's been very difficult to track down all of the scores that are still missing. But back to Coeur d'Alene and their volleyball program, they went down to the Kuna Classic. Friday was pool play, and they beat really some of their peers. They beat Middleton, which used to be 6A, is now 5A. They beat Valley View, which is a 5A. They beat Mountain View, which is a 6A. So they beat all of them in 2 sets, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. They didn't drop a single set in pool play. So then in Saturday's action, it started with a second round of pool play against the other basically top teams from the other pools. And so this is where you saw on Saturday, Coeur d'Alene played some smaller schools. They played Bishop Kelly, and they split that 1-1. BK is a 5A program. Then they played Ambrose, which is a 3A. They beat them 2-0. And then they played Grace Lutheran, a 1A. It's about as small as you can get. They've got 8 girls total on the team this year. Grace Lutheran from Pocatello. Coeur d'Alene took them out 2-0. So it's just unusual to see Coeur d'Alene playing Grace Lutheran in something. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It was interesting. And then we got to the bracket. They were in the gold bracket. They beat Cole Valley Christian 3-0. And this is where we got to best, sets of 3 instead of sets of 2. So they beat Cole Valley Christian in the quarterfinals. They beat Melba in the semifinals. Melba, the defending 3A state champs, so a good program. And then to the championship, they got to play Mountain View again. They played them on Friday and beat them in pool play. They beat them on Saturday. So Coeur d'Alene goes undefeated, 8-0 over the season opening weekend, and they bring home first place from the Kuna Classic. But as always seems to be the case, they always seem to fly south to Boise rather than bus. And so there's always a crunch to be like, are we going to make our flight on time or not? A couple of years ago, Coeur d'Alene had to leave a tournament early. They had to forfeit their spot, I believe, in the championship so they could catch their flight back home. It just seems like it's always like right on that edge for the Coeur d'Alene volleyball team in terms of making it back home on time.
Yeah, and I mean, to back yourself into that corner, but I know that they were like, well, the coach kind of told the girls like, hey, we're gonna have to make quick work of this championship game if we're gonna make it home on time. So either win quick or we're out of here halfway through the match. And so they took care of business and ended up getting out the door and getting their flight in time and getting through TSA and all that fun stuff. But a cool experience. I mean, to do that, kind of that weekend leading up before school starts, and just I think I see why coaches do it. It's a great team building event too, that you get to build the continuity within the program and within the team, and have that experience going into some meat of your schedule too, because there's some big events. If you look at the volleyball schedule for these area schools here in North Idaho, there's some massive tournaments coming up. And then you go into the IEL play. I mean, IEL play isn't any slouch for Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, Sandpoint, Post Falls, Lewis. I mean, all these teams have pretty solid volleyball programs, Lakeland included, Moscow included. So there's no easy days off necessarily in North Idaho. We talked about it last year, how competitive the league was, and I think we're going to see it again this year. Granted, Lewiston dropping down, but with Post Falls, Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, I mean, that's 3 really high caliber volleyball teams that, are going to compete up here north.
So Ryan, last week, I recorded season previews for volleyball for all 6 classifications with our volleyball analyst, Lindsay Togiai Afuk, and we got to the 5A discussion, and I didn't proclaim it as boldly as I'm going to proclaim it here, but I think Lakeland is going to win the 5A state championship this year. I really do believe that. I look at who's coming back. I look at the tall, athletic hitters they've got on the outside. Landry Simon is a fantastic athlete. And I just look at the 5A landscape. Skyview, the defending champs, they're gone. They moved up to 6A. Bonneville, second place. They lost everybody. I mean, almost everybody to graduation. How do they replace? Tough to say. Canyon Ridge was at state last year. They moved up to 6A. Twin Falls will be good, But to me, I look on paper and like Lakeland took 4th at state last year. I really do think the ceiling is way up here for Lakeland.
Oh,
this year.
absolutely. Yeah. And I know that they've got high hopes within their program too, but yeah, you start looking at the kind of, I don't know, re-engineered landscape of classifications. And we talk about it ad nauseum in football, but with the other sports, I mean, it's like, you kind of look at it now and you're like, shrug your shoulders. You're like, I could see anybody. But Lakeland, realistically, with what they bring back, I mean, they're not far off removed from, we talk about them getting 4th at state last year, and they've got a state championship under their belt within the last few years too. And so, that's a program that's just continuing to build on their success, and that they're going to continue to find that. And I don't disagree with you at all picking them as a dark horse for that state championship at all. That's definitely in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and I'll be even more, and we'll see. We'll circle back in November and see how right I was. I don't even think it's a dark horse. I think they're the favorite going in.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Are they playing at the Mountain America Center this year too? Is that where 5A is? I'm trying to remember.
Ooh, I think that's correct, but I will. Yeah.
I want to say 5A and 6A are there, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, so. We shall see. Here's a comment from Tyler Wicks in the chat. He says, should have re-engineered Ambrose and the other private schools out of the 3A. Yeah, he's talking about Ambrose and Nampa Christian. And, Coal Valley Christian did move up a level. They're 4A now rather than 3A. So that will be a fun off-season topic maybe. What do we do about all the private schools and charter schools and all that?
Yeah, there's a lot of noise about some ones here in North Idaho too right now, especially when you go down into District 2 with some of the success that school has seen. So they're going to be, I think in the next classification cycle, they're going to end up enrollment-wise, they're going to end up anyways. It's going to be a non-argument, but yeah.
Yeah, just so we're clear, I mean, we're talking about Logos, and this isn't you and I talking. This is fans around the White Pine League. I mean, they're public comments on social media. You can go see them anywhere. But when it was reported that Logos had 40 players out for football, that raised an eyebrow or several around the rest of the White Pine League. Like, wait a minute, what's the deal here? But yes, they are building a new campus. They are probably going to be playing 11-man football as soon as that new campus is built. Enrollment's going to go way up. So I think it's only a temporary problem for the
Genesis Prep is building their new campus too. And I think that growth is going to cause some changes in that landscape as well. But yeah, and the thing is, like, people have to remember the IHSAA deals with the numbers that come from the State Board of Education on what actually has to be reported to the state for enrollment. So it's not like these schools are hiding enrollment numbers and things like that. They're going based off purely how many kids are in the school when that enrollment cycle was taken, which was over the last 2 years, to come up with this 2-year cycle. So, in Ambrose's defense and everything else, like, people can huff and puff about stuff like that they're a private school and they get certain opportunities. That may or may not be true, but you look at numbers, that's where you're at. I mean, the state board dictates, and the IHSA dictates who plays where for what 2-year cycle. So,
the argument coming from the other side. And again, we'll move on. We'll dive into this more fully when we have a little more breathing room, not the start of the school year. But thanks, Tyler. No, I'm just kidding. Tyler, we love it. Thank you. If you could hit that like button while you're hanging out, that would be awesome as well. Oh, already did. Perfect. Thanks, Tyler. Okay. So the other side, I think, is going to argue, Ambrose is in Meridian, Coal Valley Christian is in Meridian, Logos is in Moscow. The population base of those cities is much larger than a Potlatch or a Marsing. And so how do those small communities compete with the metro where you can be selective? And we only have X amount of students, but it's high quality, So anyways, that's the other point. And I see both sides of it, certainly. And we'll dive more into it later on this year. You'll just have to
of all the arguments that could be made, Knowledge Bowl would be the one that would have the biggest argument.
Exactly. Jeopardy.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right.
We just come up with our episode name. Is that what you're writing down?
Yeah, the Knowledge Bowl. Okay. One last volleyball note to touch on. This is a serious one. Sandpoint and Lake City were playing in their season opener on Friday night. The match got basically called off during the first set, or maybe early on in the second set. Lexi Burns from Lake City suffered a pretty severe injury, and neither team emotionally, mentally was able to say, hey, yeah, we can continue, because it was a pretty gruesome injury for those that were in attendance. Good news to report, though, Ryan. So they postponed the match. It'll be made up later in the season at some point. That's not the important part. The important part is that Lexi is out of surgery and doing well. Her family posted an update on social media, and here's what it says. Lexi checked out of the hospital Saturday night. Her surgery went well, and she has responded well to all the meds and physical therapy. We're all grateful for all the support from friends, family, and everyone in the volleyball world. We're extremely grateful for the staff and volunteers at Lake City for taking good care of our girl while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. To the family from Sandpoint, we think, who helped with her brother while we were focused on Lexi, thank you. We're definitely spoiled here in North Idaho. A lot of people have reached out to offer so much support. Thank you for all the encouragement, prayers, and everything in between. So I thought this was pretty cool. Yesterday afternoon, Lexi and her family were at the Coeur d'Alene Resort in the afternoon, for everyone to come visit her and give her well wishes and check on her and see how she was doing. The family lives kind of far out of town, and so instead of making everybody drive way far to come see her, they're like, why don't we come to Coeur d'Alene? Everybody can come see us on Monday afternoon. And so it was a great idea, I thought, and most importantly, it's great to see that Lexi is recovering.
Yeah, you made the best point there too at the beginning, was that, that was the important matter, is that the player's okay. The results be darned. I mean, they can make up a date anytime they want. They can just pick a day. It's gym space. That's the only issue at play. When it's an injury and a health situation like that, I mean, paramedics and fire and everything. I mean, it's a pretty involved process, and that's the cool thing about this volleyball community, though, and that we have those great club teams here in North Idaho, is that it kind of spans schools. It's not just the Lake City group and the Sandpoint and everything else. Like, a lot of these kids play with each other in the off season. They travel with each other. They go to events and things like that. So, to hear like another school's family consoling the brother of a player that's pretty severely injured, like, that doesn't surprise me at all in North Idaho. Like, that's just how people are here. I mean, it's pretty awesome that, they do the right thing, and to look out for each other is pretty neat. And to see that she's doing better, she's recovering well from surgery and responding well. And, that's the important piece. And, we wish her the best here as well. And both those schools are going to have successful seasons this year. So, we look forward to hearing better updates and things in the future, that she's going to be, doing other activities later this year, hopefully.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And again, we wish Lexi and her family the best as she continues to recover as well. Lake City and Sandpoint did meet up on the soccer pitch in girls soccer, battled to a 0-0 draw. I think that our expectations are kind of right in line with what they were. I expect Lake City and Sandpoint to represent the North at their respective state tournaments this year.
Yep. And I mean, to get a keeper's duel like that, to a 0-0 draw, I mean, that just, both of those teams are going to blow up offensively against other opponents, but that just tells you defensively, both those clubs are equally dominant. And so, yeah, I mean, you can see both those teams playing for state championships in their classification. Like, we say that every year ad nauseum, it feels like, but that's just the quality of these programs. And yeah, we'll continue to see that, I think, go back and forth through the year. I mean, getting a league match right out of the chute of that caliber, you get two really, really high caliber teams in their respective classifications. It only makes sense they play to a draw. So, yeah, that's how it goes.
Yep. Speaking of teams that did qualify for championships last year, let's go to football. And Coeur d'Alene, picking up right where they left off a season ago. They hosted Rigby in what was the premier game across the state Friday night. There's no doubt about it. Rigby at Coeur d'Alene. The last 2 years they had played at the University of Montana's Washington Grizzly Stadium over in Missoula. Well, that's being occupied by several concerts. Pearl Jam, Pink, Tyler Childers, all there in like the span of like 2 weeks. So concerts pushed that game away. But Coeur d'Alene got to host. They'll travel to Rigby next year. The Vikings win 24-14. The defense comes away with 3 interceptions, 2 from Jason Cady, 1 from Kai Wheeler. I thought Christian Young ran the ball really well. And this is a game that, I mean, it started, Scaggs, with Coeur d'Alene lining up for a field goal midway through the first quarter. Colby Cooey drops the snap, just takes off and runs with it. 17 yards for a touchdown, just how they drew it up.
Yeah, and you look at, I mean, just going through the stat lines too. I mean, that's the difference between last year's Coeur d'Alene team and this year's is, I mean, the balance that they have in the running game. I mean, Young had 10 carries for 23 yards. Coeur ran the ball once that you talked about that one score, but Browning had 11 carries for 37. Booth had a carry, Stern had a carry, Simmons had a couple carries in there. I mean, they spread the wealth. I mean, on to take care of it. We talk about what was missing, from the running game last year compared to this year, is that it's going to be kind of by committee, I think, as we see it progress through the season. Mainly, obviously, relying on Young and Browning, which we kind of talked about in the preview. But then you look in the passing game, how efficient Caden Simmons was. I mean, he was 18 of 27 for 204, no picks. Like, that's awesome. And then how many receivers ended up catching a pass? Is that you've got he passed it to 9 different receivers. I mean, you look at the stat line and what Coeur d'Alene's able to do, the balance that they have, that is going to be an absolute game planning nightmare for any of their opponents.
Yep. And that's something that Coach Sean Amos told the Coeur d'Alene Press post-game, is that's where Caden Simmons has taken the biggest leap from his sophomore year to his junior year. Last year, he's kind of like Brett Favre in size and velocity of throwing the football, but also in decision-making, where he refuses to give up on a play, sometimes to the detriment, sometimes throws a pick. But Friday night had plays where if it wasn't there, all right, I'll throw it out of bounds. I'll live to fight another down. And that 0 turnovers is the most important thing. And that if he continues to do that, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to stop Coeur d'Alene. We do the IdahoSports.com pick 6 every week, where we take 6 games, 1 from each classification around the state. And then all of our prep casters make the picks. I picked Rigby to win. Big mistake, Ryan.
Whoops.
That was the difference between me tying you. You won the week. You went 5-1 with your picks. I went 4-2. That was the difference. I should have picked Coeur d'Alene, and I would have tied you.
When I saw some of the, and I was hung up a little bit on that Kimberly Fruitland game because Kimberly had the lead in that one. So I was thinking I was going to go 6-0, but I'll take 5-1 this week in week 1. I'll take the lead going into week 2.
Yep. Here's our friend Max from the Bonner County Daily Bee. Ryan was almost 6 for 6. How about Fruitland? Yeah, that's Kimberly had the lead with 5 minutes to go, a 2-score lead regardless. And Fruitland rattled off a couple of big touchdowns in the closing moments there. And Fruitland is a team, keep an eye on. They're coached by former NFL offensive tackle Jordan Gross. So he knows a thing or two about playing the game, that's for sure. So yeah, Absolutely. It was a fun game. But yes, back to Coeur d'Alene. This week, Ryan, so we launched our new show last week, Gem State Game Day. It airs every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Mountain, here on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. You can watch it anytime after it airs live, Thursday or Friday, before you get set to go to your whatever game you're going to. But it's basically like a preview of all the games that are coming up for the weekend across the state on the gridiron. And every week we're going to have a coach on, and we're going to have a player on for an interview. We had Jason Cady from Coeur d'Alene on this week's edition of Gem State Game Day. So I admitted to him face to face. I said, hey, I got to be honest. I didn't pick you guys to win. I said, let me have it. Because you got to own up to it, right? If you don't,
you got to have that. You got to have some like locker room material to like give you a little shot in the arm. But yeah,
for sure. The funniest thing he said in that interview, I talked about, because he is the kicker for Coeur d'Alene as well. So I asked him for his perspective on that first field goal attempt of the game, where the holder Colby Cooey dropped the snap and then just took off and ran. I asked him, I said, is there a code word you guys yell to where you go to whatever play you've organized? And he said, yes, but here's the thing. Colby didn't even say the safe word. He just took off. He didn't even yell the code word. He just took it and ran with it.
Oh crap.
Yeah. Just like nothing, like no words, no anything from Colby Cooey. So that was funny.
Yeah. That's awesome. No. And that's Jason Cady's a phenomenal athlete. We talked about him last year a bunch, and he's the linchpin in that defense this year. And he's just so balanced on both sides of the ball. It's gonna be exciting to see what that team's able to do this year. I mean, they've got high aspirations for a state championship, And at this point, from what we've seen, they're well deserved. They've obviously got to complete the task at hand and take care of it each individual week. But that Coeur d'Alene team is absolutely loaded for bear, and the balance that they have within that program is absolutely crazy. And you look at, I mean, something that kind of got overlooked too is Tanner Stern came in for a series in the game Friday night, and he was 4-4, like at quarterback. He came in for Caden Simmons. He's a sophomore. I know they were high on him as a freshman last year. He probably could have played varsity football last year. His dad, Matt Stern, played at Lake City back in the day. He then goes on to play at the University of Montana. There's some genetics there, but Tanner's a phenomenal athlete. So, they interviewed coach about it too. And he was like, yeah, we're one snap away from Tanner being our quarterback. And so we have to make sure that he gets his reps too, which was cool to see. But that program's in great hands. I mean, no matter what happens, there's so much. That cupboard is so full. It's not fair. I mean, they've got two probably all league caliber starting quarterbacks in that locker room.
And one of the best and most complete coaching staffs, top to bottom. Sean Amos is the head coach, and he gets the attention up front. But man, that the core group of assistant coaches, they've been there for forever. A decade plus. I mean, it's incredible. So
it's like a college staff too, though. They've got like chiefs of staff, and they've got all the auxiliary help and everything else. I mean, you look at that lineup, the coaching roster looks like the football roster. It's about as far as many guys are involved in the program.
Yeah, no doubt. So if you want to see our interview with Jason Cady, the pride of Coeur d'Alene High, tune into Gem State Game Day live Thursday morning, 7:00 Pacific time, or anytime after that as well. And it's a statewide show. We break down all of the football games across the landscape. And Coeur d'Alene up next, they are headed to the Rocky Mountain Rumble to play Shadow Ridge from Las Vegas, Nevada. And we'll see how the Vikings do, but you can tune in and watch that game totally free on IdahoSports.com. We're going to be at the Rocky Mountain Rumble all weekend long. There's going to be some really good football going on there for sure. Here's Joel Richardson in the chat. Joel is our host of the East Idaho Prepcast, talking about how Coeur d'Alene hosted Rigby this year because of all the concerts going on in Missoula. He said they won't be able to play at Rigby next season due to a Taylor Swift concert. Maybe. Joel, that might be wishful thinking. No offense to Rigby, but Taylor.
I didn't have Joel as a Swiftie on my bingo card.
Yeah. So she might, as she settles down, she might decide not to tour as much as well. So, we'll see. Okay. Let's talk about quickly before we get out of here. The game we were at Friday night, it was Coeur de Christ, and it was Lakeside out in Worley at the Coeur Center. It was a home game for Coeur de Christ. They're going to use the Coeur Center all season long as their home venue. And Lakeside got the win 54-32 in less than ideal conditions. No, that wasn't 54-32. What was the final score? 48-32. I think it was a
54. Score. They had it like 60 something on the board. It was actually 54.
Okay. But, all right. Because there was a discrepancy between the real score and what the scoreboard said.
The scoreboard said like 60 something. And I'm like, yeah, that's not right. Ignore that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Let's start with Lakeside. Pleasant surprise for us. There were a lot of names that we recognized from last year. Jarius John Moffitt, Jamari Pione, Hala Pione, Archer Brown Sonder up front on the line. But how about, for the first time in a couple of years, Tyson Charlie? We know what he can do on the basketball court, but Tyson Charlie was out there playing quarterback for Lakeside. And all he did was throw 4 touchdowns, all of them to Jamari Pione. And then he ran for 3 scores, earned our IdahoSports.com player of the game, presented by the Idaho Office of Highway Safety. And honestly, he should have had 2 more that were called back due to penalties.
He would have had a 99-yarder. Yeah, that was, but I know we talked to one of the assistant coaches after the game, and he was like, yeah, he was just hurt last year. That's why he didn't play. He would have been our quarterback last year, but he just was hurt. So for him to kind of make that comeback this year in his junior season, and just to come out and ball out. I mean, he was dominant on the field. He was the best player on the field on Friday night. And that's no slight to the other guys, because, Pione himself had himself a night. We were rolling dice on who was going to be IdahoSports.com player of the game, but Tyson did a phenomenal job Friday night leading that offense for Lakeside. It's going to make things interesting. You look at them and Wallace now in that league, and Wallace is going to chance to play Friday night at the Coeur Center against Coeur de Christ. Each of those teams playing each other twice in that conference. Going to make things interesting. Lakeside going into Wallace, that first matchup, if both teams are undefeated, I mean, you talk about an absolute dogfight. That's going to be an entertaining ball game.
Yeah, look out. It's going to be really fun. So wrapping up with Coeur Christ, I thought they looked pretty good actually for a first-year program. Obviously, Grant Clemens, freshman quarterback, name recognition. His dad is Kellen Clemens, the head coach. But really, to me, the most impressive guy was John Denke, the sophomore running back. He ran the ball exceptionally well for a sophomore.
It took him about a quarter and a half to kind of warm up a little bit to get used to the gameplay. You could tell that not only just like they play on a field that didn't have lines. There was some mishandling of snaps, stuff like that. Once they worked through their issues, that's a competitive ball club. I mean, there's talent on that field. You said Denke was impressive. Connolly was impressive. They've got some cast members in that team that can make a difference in an 8-man football game. They're not far off from getting a little bit of numbers here this year and next. That's going to be a team that can make a playoff run real quick in the 1A ranks.
Yeah, and everybody plays each other this week. So Clark Fork is going to take on Lakeside, and then Wallace comes to the Coeur Center to play Coeur Christ. Clark Fork had the week off. We saw Coach Patrick Young at the game Friday night. He was kind of just scouting things, and we had a nice chat with him at halftime. And best of luck to the Wampus Cats in their season opener Friday night. Here is Ryan West. He is the co-coach of Timberline up there in Weippe, the Spartans. How about this? Lakeside wins against Wallace easily, and he would know because Timberline just played Wallace last week. Now Wallace won that game 32-12. The big storyline there is Cooper Miller, the freshman quarterback. I can't remember a quarterback coming into his high school career with as much fanfare. He threw 2 touchdowns, both to Julian Davis, ran for 2 scores as well. But interesting from Coach West himself, he thinks he's seen Wallace with his own eyes. He thinks Lakeside wins that game. It will be a very interesting matchup when those two finally do meet up.
There may have to be some adjustments to our broadcast schedule eventually at some point to catch one of those games, because I think both of them are going to be absolutely awesome ball games.
Yes, that's going to be can't miss. And by the way, I think Timberline's going to be better than people think this year too. That league is wide open over there, the White Pine League.
Based on what we saw after week 1, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And then let's wrap up with the White Pine League with Genesee. They were playing Lapway. Genesee is a program that's got probably the most numbers of anybody in that 1A White Pine League this year. And we thought, well, maybe that'll boost them a little bit. They played Lapway, and Lapway put up 68 points on them and ran away convincingly. So my question to you very quickly is, did we overrate Genesee? Did we underrate Lapway, or is it a little bit of both?
I'm going to say a little bit of both, but I really think we criminally underrated Lapway. I know that the classification differences there between the two schools, Lapway being one of the largest 2A schools in the state, Genesee coming down a classification, but I think Lapway's got some criminally underrated talent in that lineup. They've got team speed like crazy. They can play. McCormick's a baller. So I look at the White Pine. It's there's 2 teams I would realistically put in the basement of that group as far as on the bottom end, and then it's like Kendrick, Logos, and then pick them. You really could draw straws. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand with the White Pine League.
Logos looked good, had the lead early against Butte County, faltered late. We'll see how they adjust. And one more quick note from Coach West up there at Timberline. Wallace scored 24 of their 32 points in 8 minutes. So outside of that, Timberline played them straight up, basically. Yep. They outscored them the other, 24 minutes of the game, 12-6. So there's going to be a lot of fun football up here, especially in the 8-man ranks this year. It's going to be so much fun, and we will be here to chronicle it for you every single week here on IdahoSports.com.
The pendulum of strength is kind of shifted north a little bit for this year, I think, and we'll see it as it goes on. The season's a little early, but yeah, there's a lot of competitive ball going on each and every weekend. There's some great games. If you look at our schedules, man, there's some good games.
Yep. The big ones for North Idaho are this weekend. The Rocky Mountain Rumble, Coeur d'Alene taking on Shadow Ridge on Friday afternoon. One of 7 games this weekend on IdahoSports.com from the Rocky Mountain Rumble. We'll have other broadcasts as well. You can always check the game streams tab at the top of the homepage on Idaho Sports. Okay, how about this? Okay, one more note, and then we'll get out of here. This is from Wallace Miners Athletics. We're getting it straight from the horse.
We get a little Twitter or a little beef going on in the comments section.
No beef. Just some clarification. I like this. We're getting it straight from the horse's mouth because we're just two guys, and we were both in Worley Friday night, so we don't have context, right?
We do not.
We're going off of what. Okay, Lakeside will be a tough opponent without question. However, Wallace was down there starting running back, not cleared to play, also missing their middle linebacker. Okay, so there's room to grow on both sides. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I know, and you could throw Lakeside in there too. That their coach is like, hey, we didn't play disciplined football. I mean, how many penalties did they give up Friday night too with just illegal blocks? They kept drives alive. I mean, there's a lot of things you could look at. I think that's just the thing of week one in general, is that you're kind of finding out who you are, and there's a lot of room to kind of move throughout the rest of the season and see how things progress. So, you'll get kids back. You may lose kids to injuries. That's the way. It's a funny shaped football that takes funny bounces. For sure. And anyone who tuned into the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast last week knows that I picked Wallace to qualify for the 1A championship game this year. I'm standing by that, until I see something different. I still think Wallace. I'm going to throw Lakeside in the mix then too. I don't know if they're a championship team yet, but I mean, if Tyson Charlie's playing hot and then Peons are running, roughshod, and there's some talent on that team. There's speed out there too.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun no matter how you slice it up. That is for sure. Hey, big thanks to everybody that chimed in. This is what we want. We want the conversation with everybody in North Idaho, because like I said, we're just two guys. We can't be everywhere every Friday. And so it's definitely nice to get that interaction. And I appreciate everybody keeping it civil for the most part as well. It could be, it could devolve pretty quickly. I think Wallace sums it up best here. #We are the North. Yes, absolutely.
I think everybody's on everybody's team up here. It's kind of us against everyone. And that's I think the way we like it.
Yeah, that's right. We're in a whole different time zone, for crying out loud. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, big thanks to everybody for tuning into the North Idaho Prepcast. Enjoy the competitions this weekend. If you're traveling, do so safely. We want you back here again next week for another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in on Idaho Sports.